I moved to Kansas City without telling my parents to see if they'd notice. They didn't, until my dad called asking for help. I panicked. I'm 24 years old, and until a few months ago, I wasn't sure if my parents even remembered that. Growing up, I always felt like an afterthought in my own family. Not in a tragic, made-for-therapy way, but more like a recurring character on a sitcom who shows up every few episodes but doesn't really drive the plot. Case in point. When I turned 18, my mom made a scrapbook to celebrate Kyle's graduation. Kyle is my dog. Yes, she caught the mistake later, but not until the cover was already laminated. That's been my life in a nutshell. After college, I decided I'd had enough of being invisible. So, I did something drastic. I moved to a different state without telling anyone. No dramatic announcement, no cryptic social media posts, just me and my dog. Yes, Kyle driving 600 miles to Kansas City. It wasn't meant to be a rebellion. It was more like a science experiment. How long would it take for them to notice I was gone? Spoiler. Longer than you'd think. Life in Kansas City wasn't bad. I got a decent IT job, rented a tiny studio apartment that always smelled faintly of microwave dinners, and started to build something resembling independence. My phone stayed eerily silent. Weeks turned into months, and the only calls I got were from spam numbers. My mom texted me once in early September. Do you still like those trail mix bars? Costco has a deal. That was the extent of her parental check-in. I'd almost forgotten about the whole experiment until last week. It was a Friday night, and I was sprawled on my couch, half watching The Office for the 100th time when my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in a while, Dad. He never called unless it was an emergency, or he needed help resetting the Wi-Fi password. I stared at the phone for a second before answering. Hello. Hey, Kev. His voice boomed like he'd just run into me at the grocery store. What are you up to? I sat up, suddenly suspicious. Not much. Why? So, you're home then? I froze. Home. As in the place I hadn't lived for months. My pulse quickened as I realized he had no idea I wasn't in the same town anymore. Yeah, I said cautiously. What's up? Oh, great, he said like it was all settled. I need you to swing by the house. Got a little project, and I could really use your help. And that's when I realized this was going to get messy. When your dad asks for help with a little project, it can mean anything from untangling Christmas lights to replacing the water heater. I had no idea what I was signing up for, but one thing was certain. I couldn't exactly show up. I scrambled for an excuse. I'm kind of tied up right now. What's the project? It's your mom's car, he said, his voice heavy with that dad tone that always implies you're about to spend 6 hours holding a flashlight incorrectly. The check engine light came on, and she says it's making a weird noise. Figured we'd pop the hood and take a look together. My mom doesn't even drive. She's sworn off it since the Great Fender Bender of 2014, when she tried to parallel park in front of the post office and somehow managed to take out a mailbox. The car, the noise, and the check engine light were all red herrings. Dad just wanted company. Wish I could help. I lied. But I'm out running errands. Oh yeah? Where at? His tone was casual, but I knew my dad. This was a setup. I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. Target. Picking up, batteries. Batteries? He paused, like he was trying to decide whether to push further. Huh. Okay. Well, how about tomorrow? Swing by after lunch. I felt my stomach drop. I couldn't keep dodging forever. If I said no again, he'd start asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. Sure, yeah, I said, mentally kicking myself. Tomorrow works. I hung up, my mind racing. There was no way I could just appear in my parents' house like nothing had changed. But I also didn't want to spill the truth and admit I'd moved halfway across the country without telling them. Then it hit me. Maybe I didn't have to show up at all. The next morning, I called my best friend Nate. He was one of the few people who actually knew about my move, mainly because he helped me load the U-Haul. Hey, I said, skipping the pleasantries. Are you free today? Depends, he said cautiously. What's the favor? I need you to go to my parents' house and pretend to be me. Nate laughed, then stopped when he realized I was serious. What? No, absolutely not. Come on, I pleaded. They won't even notice. Just wear a hoodie and keep your head down. I'll coach you through everything over the phone. This is insane. Please, Nate. You owe me for that time I drove you to the ER when you got your hand stuck in the Pringles can. That was 5 years ago, and yet I never bring it up. Except now. Come on, man. 1 hour, tops. Nate groaned. Phoenix, but you owe me big time. I grinned, already pulling up FaceTime to walk him through the plan. This is going to work. Probably. Part 3, the switch. I spent the next hour on FaceTime with Nate, coaching him on everything he needed to know about pulling off this ridiculous stunt. It wasn't rocket science. My parents weren't exactly detectives, but it required some finesse. Okay, I said, pacing around my apartment as I spoke. Just act like you're in a rush. Dad loves to ramble, so keep redirecting him to the car. Avoid small talk. Got it, Nate said, though his face betrayed pure doubt. What about your mom? What if she asks about work or something? Just say it's the same old stuff, I replied. She never remembers what I actually do anyway. As long as you don't say I'm a zookeeper or something, you'll be fine. Nate gave me a long, skeptical look. You better be right about this. I wasn't. By the time Nate pulled into my parents' driveway, I was sweating bullets. I had him on a call in his AirPods, whispering instructions like we were pulling off a heist. Okay, park by the mailbox, not the garage, I said. Dad's probably watching from the living room. And don't slam the car door. He hates that. Relax, man, Nate whispered back. I'm not a complete idiot. He walked up to the door, and I heard my dad's booming voice before Nate even knocked. Kevin, about time you got here. Hey, Dad, Nate said, glancing nervously at the camera as he stepped inside. What's up? I told you what's up, Dad said, clapping him on the shoulder. The car. Come on, let's take a look. I exhaled in relief. So far, so good. But then I heard my mom's voice from somewhere in the background. Oh, Kevin, wait. Before you go outside, I need to talk to you. Nate froze. Oh, okay. Just say you'll catch her later, I hissed. I can't just... Kevin, my mom called again, louder this time. Nate had no choice. He followed Dad into the kitchen, where Mom was waiting with a bright smile and a stack of envelopes. I was just cleaning out the mail basket, she said, holding up a letter. Did you know this was sitting here for months? My blood ran cold. Nate stared at the envelope, confused. No? What is it? Mom laughed. It's your W-2. You can't keep leaving your important stuff lying around, Kevin. What if I hadn't noticed? I felt like my soul left my body. Mivdva. From my job. The job I quit 3 months ago when I moved to Kansas City. Nate's voice cracked. All right. Thanks, Mom. I'll take care of that. He snatched the envelope and made a beeline for the door. Dad, let's go check out that car? But Mom wasn't done. Kevin, wait a second. Are you feeling okay? You look a little different. I wanted to scream. Nate froze at the door, 1 foot already outside. Different? What do you mean? Your hair, my mom said, squinting at him like he was under a microscope. Did you dye it? It looked darker. From my end of the call, I could see Nate's eyes widen. Oh, yeah. Thought I'd try something new. Mom raised an eyebrow. New? Since when do you care about that stuff? Before Nate could dig himself any deeper, Dad cut in. Linda, leave the boy alone. If he wants to dye his hair, let him. We got a car to fix. Fine, Mom said, still looking suspicious. But Kevin, come back in after. You need a haircut. You're starting to look like a rock star from the 80s. Nate mumbled something non-committal and followed Dad outside, whispering to me as soon as they were clear of the house. Bro, I'm dying here. You're doing fine, I whispered back, trying to sound confident even though my heart was pounding. Just focus on the car and keep your answers short. Dad was already at the hood of Mom's car, talking a mile a minute about engine trouble and timing belts. Nate nodded along, making the occasional "huh" or "yeah, that makes sense" noise. But then Dad reached a point in his monologue where he needed input. Okay, Kevin, Dad said, holding up a wrench. You remember how to take off the air intake manifold, right? Like we did on the old Taurus back in '06. Nate froze again. I nearly shouted into the phone. Say you're rusty. Say you haven't worked on a car in years. I mean, Nate stammered. It's been a while, you know. Might need a refresher. Dad frowned. You're telling me you've forgotten something as basic as an air intake manifold? What the hell have you been doing with your life? I could hear the disappointment in his voice, and it stung, even though it wasn't directed at me. Nate threw me a desperate look through the camera, clearly regretting every decision that had led him to this moment. Sorry, Dad, he said. Guess I've been focused on other stuff. That seemed to placate Dad, at least for the moment. He sighed and muttered something about kids these days before diving back under the hood. Nate glanced at me through the camera again. You owe me so much beer for this. You'll get it? I hissed. Just hang in there. But just as it seemed like the worst was over, Mom appeared at the door again. Kevin, she called out. I just remembered. You have a dentist appointment tomorrow. Do you need me to reschedule it? Nate's head snapped toward me, panic written all over his face. What do I say to that? He whispered. Before I could answer, Dad chimed in, his head still buried in the engine. He'll be fine, Linda. The dentist is just down the road. Right, Kevin? Mom tilted her head, clearly not convinced. Down the road? Didn't you say you were living across town now? My stomach dropped. This was spiraling out of control. Nate froze like a deer in headlights. Yeah, across town. It's not a big deal, though, he mumbled, avoiding Mom's gaze. From my end of the call, I whispered furiously. Play it cool. Say you'll handle it. Yeah, Nate repeated, his voice cracking slightly. I'll handle it, no worries. But Mom wasn't buying it. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. You know, Kevin, you've been acting a little off lately. Did something happen? Are you in trouble? I could feel Nate's mounting panic through the screen. What? No, everything's fine. Totally fine. Dad, oblivious to the brewing tension, popped his head up from under the hood. Linda, leave the kid alone. He's here to help with the car, not get grilled about his personal life. Mom crossed her arms, unconvinced. I'm just saying, something feels different. He's fidgety, and he didn't hug me when he came in. Kevin always hugs me when he visits. I facepalmed so hard I nearly knocked my phone out of my hand. Nate, hug her, I hissed. What? Nate whispered back, horrified. You didn't say anything about hugs. Hug her now, or she'll start asking real questions. Nate turned to Mom with a strained smile. Sorry, Mom. I guess I've just been distracted. He leaned in and gave her a quick, awkward hug. It was more of a shoulder pat, really, but it seemed to placate her for the moment. She said, still eyeing him suspiciously. Okay, but you're staying for dinner, right? I'm making your favorite, lasagna. Nate shot me a desperate look through the camera. Am I staying for dinner? He whispered. I whispered back. Make up an excuse. Oh, you know, I'd love to, Nate said, pulling out his best fake regret. But I've got plans tonight. Something with work. Big deadline coming up. Dad frowned. On a Saturday? Yeah, Nate said, nodding a little too enthusiastically. It's, complicated. Mom wasn't buying it. You're always so busy these days, she said, her tone laced with guilt. I barely see you anymore. My heart sank. It wasn't Nate's fault, but the sadness in her voice hit me like a freight train. For the first time, I started to question this whole ridiculous charade. Maybe I'd taken things too far. Nate shuffled uncomfortably. I'll try to visit more, Mom. Promise. That seemed to soften her. She smiled faintly and patted his arm. All right, but don't let it be too long, okay? Yeah, sure, Nate said, clearly relieved to have dodged the bullet. Anyway, we should probably get back to the car. But just as he turned toward the driveway, Mom stopped him again. Oh, Kevin, she said, her face lighting up. Before you go, I found that old photo album you were asking about. You want to take it home with you, right? Nate's eyes darted to me on the screen. Photo album? He mouthed silently. I had no idea what she was talking about. Nate blinked at my mom, visibly thrown. Oh, yeah, sure, he said, trying to sound casual. Can you grab it for me? Mom beamed. Of course. I'll be right back. She disappeared into the house, leaving Nate to shoot me a panicked glare. What album? He hissed into the phone. I have no idea, I whispered back, my heart racing. Just play along. Pretend you remember it when she brings it out. Bro, this is getting out of control, Nate muttered. You owe me a lifetime of beer for this. Before I could respond, Mom returned, clutching a thick, dusty album that looked like it hadn't seen daylight in years. She opened it to a random page and pointed to a faded photo. See? This one. You love this picture. It's you and Kyle in the backyard with that inflatable pool. Nate squinted at the photo. Oh yeah, totally. Great times. Mom smiled, but her expression softened into something almost wistful. You were so little then, always running around with Kyle. I miss those days. She sighed and handed the album to Nate. Here, take it with you. You can look through it when you have some time. Nate accepted the album awkwardly, holding it like it was a ticking bomb. Thanks, Mom. I'll definitely do that. Dad, still under the hood of the car, chimed in without looking up. Good idea. Maybe looking through that will remind you to visit more often. Huh. The guilt was palpable, and I felt it hit Nate through the screen. Yeah, he mumbled. I'll visit soon. I promise. After an agonizing hour of fumbling through small talk and car repairs, Nate finally managed to make his escape. He called me the second he got back in his car. Dude, he said, his voice tight with stress. Never again. Do you hear me? Never again. I owe you, I said quickly. Big time. I know. You owe me more than that, Nate snapped. Your mom hugged me twice, and your dad made me taste a leftover chili he's been working on. I don't even like chili, Kevin. I winced. Okay, fair. But did they suspect anything? Nate sighed. I don't think so. But your mom definitely knows something's off. She kept giving me these looks like she was trying to figure out a puzzle. I groaned. This is bad. Really bad. Oh, it gets worse, Nate said, his tone dark. She made me promise to come back next weekend for a family dinner. My stomach sank. She what? You heard me, Nate said. Family dinner. Your mom's cooking, your dad's making cocktails, and apparently, I'm the guest of honor. I dropped my head into my hands. This wasn't just spiraling out of control. It was a full-blown tornado. I can't keep doing this, Kev, Nate said firmly. You need to tell them the truth. He was right, of course, but the thought of coming clean after all this time made my chest tighten. How was I supposed to explain why I'd left? Or why I hadn't told them? I'll think about it, I said weakly. You'd better, Nate shot back. Because if I have to eat another bowl of your dad's mystery chili, we're done. The week dragged on like a slow-motion car crash. Every time I thought about the family dinner my mom was planning, my anxiety ratcheted up another notch. I knew Nate was right. I couldn't keep hiding. But every time I tried to imagine telling my parents the truth, I froze. By Saturday, I was a wreck. Nate called me around noon, sounding more irritated than concerned. You're not seriously sending me back in there, are you? I sighed. I'm working on a plan. What plan? You're out of excuses, Kev. You either show up yourself or tell them the truth over the phone. I hesitated, my mind racing. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with another call. It was my mom. Crap, it's her, I muttered. Good, Nate said. Pick up, now. I took a deep breath and answered. Hey, Mom. Hi, sweetheart, she said brightly. Just checking to see what time you'll be here. Dinner's at 6, but I figured you'd want to come early and catch up. I froze. She sounded so genuinely happy, so excited to see me. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Kevin, she prompted. You there? My throat felt like it was closing up. Nate's voice chimed in through my other ear. Tell her. Just rip the Band-Aid off. I clenched my jaw, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Mom, I need to tell you something. There was a pause. Okay, she said cautiously. What is it? I'm not in town, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I haven't been for a while. I moved to Kansas City. The silence that followed was deafening. What? She said finally, her voice laced with confusion. When did this happen? A few months ago, I admitted. I didn't tell you because, well, I wasn't sure how to bring it up. Kevin, she said slowly. You moved out of state and didn't tell us? Why? I could hear the hurt in her voice, and it cut through me like a knife. I don't know, I said, the words spilling out in a rush. I guess I felt like you and Dad didn't really notice me anyway. I wanted to see if you'd even care if I was gone. The line went quiet again. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. Kevin, of course we care. How could you think we wouldn't? I don't know, I repeated, feeling like an idiot. You barely called, and I guess I felt invisible. There was a long pause before she sighed. Sweetheart, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you felt that way. Your dad and I, we're not perfect, but we love you. We always have. I blinked, surprised by the lump forming in my throat. I love you too, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Well, she said after a moment, her tone brightening a little. I guess I'll have to settle for a FaceTime dinner tonight instead of having you here in person. Wait, what? I asked, panic creeping in. You're not getting out of family dinner that easily, she said with a hint of mischief. I'll send you the Zoom link. And don't think I won't ask you to explain this whole Nate situation, either. I groaned, but deep down, I couldn't help but smile. By the time the clock hit 6, I was sitting on my couch, laptop propped up on a stack of books, trying to figure out if my background looked presentable enough for a family Zoom call. Nate, who was still furious but slightly amused, sat on the armrest of my couch with a beer in hand, ready to witness the fallout. This is your mess, he said, smirking. I'm just here for the show. Thanks for the support, I muttered as I clicked the link Mom had texted me. The screen lit up, and there they were, my mom, sitting at the dining table with her signature glass of wine, and my dad, peering at the camera like he was trying to figure out how it worked. Kevin, Mom beamed. There you are. Hey, I said, forcing a smile. Thanks for, setting this up. Don't thank me, she said, waving a hand. I just want to know what the heck is going on. Kansas City? And who is this Nate character we had dinner with last week? Dad jumped in before I could answer. First of all, why didn't you say anything about the move? You think we don't care? I winced. It's not that I thought you didn't care. I just wasn't sure how to tell you. It felt like you guys had your own lives, and I didn't want to disrupt anything. Mom gave me a long, hard look. Kevin, we're your parents. You're not a disruption. We might not always show it, but we care more than you realize. Dad nodded, his expression softening. You could have told us, son. I would have helped you move, or at least bought you a better chair than whatever that thing is you're sitting on. I glanced at my battered thrift store find and laughed despite myself. Thanks, Dad. I'll keep that in mind next time. Then Mom leaned closer to the camera. But seriously, who's Nate? I groaned, running a hand through my hair. Nate is my friend who may have pretended to be me last week. Both of their eyebrows shot up. To be fair, Nate chimed in from the side, leaning into the frame with a sheepish grin. He owes me a lifetime supply of beer for that. Mom looked stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing. Oh my gosh, Kevin, you had your friend come here and hug me? That's bizarrely sweet, but mostly bizarre. Dad just shook his head. You've got some nerve, kid. I'll give you that. Look, I'm sorry, I said quickly. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I just didn't know how. Mom smiled gently. Well, now we know. And for the record, I don't care if you're in Kansas City or Timbuktu. You're still our son, and you're always welcome here. Same here, Dad added. But maybe next time, try using your own face instead of sending a stand-in, huh? I laughed, the knot in my chest finally starting to loosen. Deal. No more stunt doubles, I promise. By the end of the call, things felt lighter, easier. We talked about my new job, how Kyle was adjusting to city life, and Dad's latest attempts at perfecting his chili recipe. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. As I ended the call, Nate slapped me on the back. Well, that went better than expected. Yeah, I said, a grin spreading across my face. I guess it did. And just like that, I realized something. Even when things get messy, even when you make mistakes, there's something comforting about knowing you can always find your way back to the people who matter. Even if it involves a little help from a friend.